the most effective and successful way is working with R&D departments to get ahead of what the trend is going to be, to innovate a new product that would go to market and create more shelf space for them instead of fully replacing what they have. Ultimately, you're not going to take the Pepsis off the shelf or the Cokes off the shelf. It's just, it is what it is. But how do we help Pepsi or Coke get ahead of this sugar issue that's coming down the pipelines and put something on the shelf that's going to align with the guidelines? You're going to create more market share, and still have that original product for the people that you're just not going to take away from it.
Welcome to the Business Ownership Podcast, brought to you by Awareness Strategies, helping you navigate the waters between entrepreneurship and ownership. Hey there, peeps. This is Michelle Nedelec, and I am super glad that you're here with us today because I'm here with my most amazing guest, Kash. Kash, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I am totally excited. So give everybody a highlight of who you are and what you do for business.
Yeah, so I currently sit as the CEO for Icon Foods. I started my career in business with Icon Foods as the executive assistant to the CFO. And over the last few years, I have worked my way up to as high as you can go.
Nice. So what made you decide to start with them?
So I had always growing up wanted to have a family. I think like every little girl dreams of, marrying her Prince Charming and having kids, and that was no exception. My husband and I had some difficulties and some infertility having kids, and so that kind of exacerbated wanting to be home. And when I went into reality of being a stay-at-home mom, it was not the life for me. I love my kids, but I was not fulfilled, and found that it was very tumultuous on my marriage because I was frustrated when he came home. And so I finally just got to a point where I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really know. I had a business degree, but not really with an emphasis in anything. And I came across a very intriguing post for an executive assistant to a CFO, and it was a way to get into the workforce. And I loved what they were about. They are all about no sugar added. And so I got in, and about 4 months afterwards, the CFO at the time said that she was moving back to Hawaii to take care of some family. And we were not in a place to be remote. And she was like, "You could totally be the CFO." I thought she was delusional at the time. But the founder and CEO at the time was very supportive and willing to kind of give me the tools and the education and bring me a part of anything that I wanted to be on. And I just had fun and kept going, and it took me all the way to where I am today. Every opportunity that was handed, I was like, sign me up, learn to drive a forklift. I'll do it. Put me in production. I'll do it. Attend a trade show. And ultimately learned about the business in and out, and just found a true love for not only business, but the industry that we're in.
Nice. I love it. So tell us more about the business. What is it?
Yes.
What do you do? And all that kind of fun jazz.
Yeah. So we are an ingredient manufacturer. So we work with companies to either replace sugar or lower their sugar content and clean up their labels. And so we work with ingredients like allulose and erythritol, monk fruit. Stevia is pretty well known with the consumers right now. So we work with mostly R&D departments within CPG companies to replace sugar or reduce it at the very minimum.
Nice. For those who don't know what CPG is.
Yes. Consumer, why am I having a blank?
Goods?
Consumer goods, yes.
I know the acronym.
On the shelves that we purchase at the store. We work with the R&D departments for those types of companies.
Very fun.
Yeah.
So as the now that you've taken over the company, it reminds me of a 80s commercial. I like Gillette so much, I bought the company. It's like, I like so much, I just took over. That is awesome. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, the founder, kind of a funny story. So our founder, his background is actually radio, and he had a passion also for sugar reduction. And so he kind of was doing this out of his garage, and doing it kind of about the same time that Quest was kind of being founded in the background. And so Quest has um quite a large impact on our success. But same kind of story of, they called him up and said, can I get, 200 units? And he was like, sure, got off the phone and like, how am I going to do this? And shortly that turned into, can I get 2 truckloads? And of course, kind of same story, like, how am I going to do this? And he figured out a way to do it. And he's been very supportive to people like me that kind of like probably wouldn't have the same trajectory in another company, but was willing to put in the work and figure out how we get from A to B. And he wanted to do other things as well. He should, after running the business for 25 years, he just needed someone that had the same passion. I feel like when you found it, when you found a company, it's kind of a baby, right? Like you bring it up through infancy and adolescence, and handing it off is very difficult. And he did it with grace, but it definitely had its challenges. And it's not as easy handing a big business over from one CEO to another as it is kind of these smaller companies.
Absolutely, it is. So I understand your passion for it, but explain to people why you have such a passion for this, because I think it's important to understand.
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've always been into fitness. I was an athlete. I've been an athlete my whole life. And so nutrition is super important to me. Having kids, it's been super important in how they kind of understand what goes in our bodies. I think that when you read labels in stores, it can be very convoluted, right? And to the regular consumer going in, I think that you look at labels and you want to believe everything that on them, no sugar added. And there's a lot of falsehoods to some of those labelings. So uh that is my main passion, is making sure that consumers understand what they're purchasing and what those labels mean. And there's quite a bit of legislature coming out right now that kind of supports this. So the Truth in Label Act is kind of in the works right now. Also, I believe it was April 24th, the USDA announced a whole reform on the school lunch program, which will now put limits on, sugar intake for students and sodium intake for students. And so for me, it's so important because I think that there is a vast majority of our population that really wants to be successful when they are looking at nutrition for themselves. And I think that there's a lot of misguidedness in the labeling, and it really sets people up for failure. And so it's become a passion because I think that all of us should have the right to understand and know what's going in our body, and understand that what's on the label should be true and not misleading. And so working with the companies that we do work with that that have those same values, that brings a lot of passion and joy to my life.
Well, and it's an interesting conundrum, because the whole reason that labels were brought onto food, and it got to a point where it was almost stupid at one point. It's like an
Yes.
apple has a label on it saying this is an apple. It's like, well, can't figure
Right.
that out. But at the
Right.
same time, people were putting stuff in apples and going, like, how does this happen? And
Right.
why did it kind of come across? And I'm sure that's a whole, week's journey of a conversation for you.
It is, but I also think that, we as consumers kind of did it to ourselves because of the convenience, right? Like everything was so convenient. Like how can we make dinner in 3 minutes because the working mom is no longer the stay-at-home mom, and time is of the essence. And I think we let convenience take over, and some of those bigger companies kind of capitalized on that.
Right. Absolutely. So now when you're working with companies, are you going after them? Are they coming after you? And like, what does the dynamics of that relationship look like?
It's a little bit of both. I would like to see us going after companies a little bit more, but the employee workforce is a little hard right now. And so we're a little light on salespeople, but our main focus is going after the R&D departments, because when you have a product on the shelf, it's really hard to go through a reformulation. If you think about some of those big companies on the shelves, they've got hundreds of thousands, if not millions of products on the shelves, and going through a reformulation means probably new packaging. It's going to go through a whole process with the R&D team for, bench testing, scale testing, things like that. And so for us, the most effective and successful way is working with R&D departments to get ahead of what the trend is going to be, to innovate a new product that would go to market and create more shelf space for them instead of fully replacing what they have. Ultimately, you're not going to take the Pepsis off the shelf or the Cokes off the shelf. It's just, it is what it is. But how do we help Pepsi or Coke get ahead of this sugar issue that's coming down the pipelines, and put something on the shelf that's going to align with the guidelines? You're going to create more market share, and still have that original product for the people that you're just not going to take away from it. So the R&D departments is really where we like to be. And then ultimately once we have a product that has been approved, finalized, and all of that, we then go to the procurement department, where they just start procuring the goods from us. We have a couple of value adds in the fact that we don't only work with commodities. So our value add is that we do blending, which for your listeners, this may be going into the weeds, but when we're working with food, you have to think about texture, mouthfeel, where it's going to hit the palate, and making sure that you're giving the full experience in the mouth, not just a front end or a back end. And so when we work with formulators, we're working to enhance that, flavor profile, so the experience is from front to back. And our blends allow us to do that. We also have to look at application, right? When you look at sugar that you use for a cookie and powdered sugar that you would use for a frosting, essentially it's the same product, but if you use that granulated sugar for the frosting, it's probably going to be the last time people eat your frosting, because it will be so gritty. And so we also do that particle reduction, which can help emulsify in liquid a lot better than a granulated product. So, like I said, that goes into the weeds a little bit, but that is also why we want to work with the formulators and the food scientists, because it's really not a plug and play replacement for sugar and what we're doing. It's a very technical sale.
Well, and I think the psychology of eating has to play in there too, because a lot of people don't really understand the nuances, the difference between an aperitif, like something that you would have before dinner and then dinner, and what's the entree, what's the appetizer, like how do you elicit those flavors? And depending on what the appetizer is, depends on how they're going to experience the entree.
Yeah, that's a really great point in the psychology and just kind of the thought process around food. It's like an experience, right? I mean, ultimately food was put out to nourish us and sustain us, but it's become this experience and emotional experience, I guess you could say. And when you look at like my parents and my grandparents and kind of the fads that they went through, where it was low carb, or low carb is what I really remember from their generations, but they were willing to give up taste for the fad. Right. And so I remember like my mom eating rice cakes out the wazoo, because there was really no calorie count. There was no really carb count, and it would fill you up for the time being. And what we're finding with millennials especially, but also Gen Zs, is they are not willing to give up taste, right? They want to be able to watch the calories, watch the sugars, watch the carbs, or whatever this fat is right now. It's blood sugar, but they're not willing to sacrifice taste, which is very
Now,
interesting.
does that mean they have savory, like they can actually taste the lemon in it? Or does that mean that they're still wanting it to be sweet, even though it might be lemon flavored?
I think both, right? Like they just don't want to eat cardboard. Like they want, like if they're
Fair
going to
enough.
eat something, they want to have that fun, emotional experience of
Experience.
like, this is great. This is indulgent, but I'm also not blowing a diet or whatever the case may be. I think there's always a 50-50 split with that sweet and savory. It's definitely in my household. I have more of a savory tooth. My husband definitely need something sweet after every meal to top it off. But I also think too with that mindset and like when the food industry kind of evolves through these trends, there's texture. Like when you're working with ice cream and replacing some of these ingredients, you lose some of the texture. So how do you keep the texture? Because my husband is one that he wants ice cream, but he's willing to give up the sugar, but it still has to taste like ice cream, both taste wise and texture wise.
And taste wise brings up another good one, because I know when they started adding stevia to everything, I was like, oh God, does this taste like this to everybody? And I hate the taste of stevia. And most people go like, I don't even notice it.
So you must be a super taster. When you taste stevia, does it taste like cilantro or like a
And I
kind of like
actually love
soap?
cilantro, but yes, it's got a real chemically kind of taste to
Yeah.
it. And I don't like it at all.
Yeah. So
I'd rather have no
super.
sugar.
Yep.
Like
So
that.
super tasters tend to taste that kind of off note in stevia. Stevia is also interesting because there's multiple grades, right? And
Mhm.
so it definitely depends on the quality of the stevia that you're using, the grade of the stevia that you're using, and also how you're using it. So, um, and again, working with the formulators, we're working with all kinds of stevia is a high intensity. So it wasn't really designed to replace sugar on a one-to-one basis. You usually have to do some sort of bulking. And that is one of the challenges that we find with sugar replacements is that a lot of this the population thinks of sugar as a sweetness factor, right? But
Mhm.
sugar also adds a level of bulk, right? So if we take out a cup of sugar from the cookie batch and we replace it with stevia, if you put in a cup of stevia, I don't think anyone's going to be eating your cookies again. But
Exactly.
that's where it kind of comes in with the formulation is like if stevia is what you want, it tends to come up very clean on a label. And so
Mhm.
that is a pro to it. But if you're going to use stevia, how are you going to replace that bulk?
Mhm.
And there's multiple ways to do it. You could do it with fiber. Um, that tends to be our favorite way to go about it. But those are challenges that we deal with in replacing sugars. It's just not always for sweetness.
Right. Well, and I mean, there's so many directions I could take this conversation, but let's go back to business on the business side of it. So when you're working with people, is there any industry like food wise that's
Mhm.
not kind of on the plate, from alcoholic mixed beverages to I don't know, like McCain's or something like that, where they have a
Yeah.
kind of a viable or a proven product line,
Yeah.
if you want to put it that way.
Yeah, I would say nothing's really off the table. We do have a food scientist in-house, and he specializes in beverage. And so we do a lot with beverage companies. Um, but we'd also like bars. Like I said, we helped with Quest before they were sold to Atkins. Um, Excuse me. And so bars are another one that we really like to play in, but we have worked with all types of industries. We've done formulations for condiments. Um, we have done bars. We have done pancake mixes. brownie mixes. So it tends to be more on the sweeter side than the savory side, but we have done a little bit on the savory side.
Nice. And is it like Quest was, to me, I love Quest. So I didn't even ask you about that one. But Quest started off as protein bars and protein shakes and stuff. Is it more of the people that are health conscious about it, or is it just the market in general is kind of going like, we don't really want all that sugar in there?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both. I think that consumers are realizing that they have a voice. And again, I think like the Gen Zs and the millennials and them as individuals, but them as parents are really starting to look at the sugar intake and seeing the effects that it has had on the body, the brain, their children, and really taking a stand and like, I don't want to be a part of this anymore. And so I do think that the consumers are having a pretty big voice in that. But I also think that the industry is going that way because, I mean, they're going to be forced to because of the all of the things that are going on, like I'm completely blanking it right now, but the semaglutide, like the GLP-1 agonists, Ozempic. Yes.
You can totally blank out on words like that. That's totally
Ozempic, like the things like Ozempic where people they're wanting these lifestyle changes, and our food scientist actually did go on Ozempic just to see like what the side effects were, because he's dealing with food scientists and reformulations. And when he was on it, it really was suppressing appetite. And so he did notice that. He also noticed that when you're eating these things that are high in saturated fat, high in sugar, you've some of the side effects are you feel sick afterwards. And so we're seeing that the population is going on these drugs, and these are the effects, which is having an impact on some of these bigger companies. I think it was Q4, Walmart showed a 2% reduction in their snacking food area of the business. And that relates to about 2% of the population being on Ozempic during that quarter. And so it's pretty fascinating when you see that Walmart as a whole saw almost the same percentage of a decrease in that area of snacking as the population that was on it. And so I think it is a level of both. I think consumers are wanting something that's cleaner. And I think that the food companies are either going to have to oblige, or they're going to continue to see a decrease in those sales.
So I ask you a question before I go into my Cinderella story.
That's okay.
What has been your most fun part? Like the part that just gets you giddy about your whole business?
The part that gets me giddy, I would say that it's never the same. I mean, every day, probably every CEO can say this, but every day is different. You never know what you're walking into. But I would also say the opportunity, just, I have a big value on having a growth mindset and taking opportunities that are given. And so just never knowing who you're going to meet, who you're going to talk to, how they're going to impact your life or how you're going to impact them, that gets me giddy. But I would say one of the biggest things is seeing these companies that we're working with, when they finally get their product to market, and walking into the store and having a sense of, I had a hand in that, or my team had a hand in that. And also being able to stand by the product, purchase it, and have like my household love it. So I would say the success of others really gets me giddy.
Nice. So in a moment, I'm going to ask you about a Cinderella story of one of your clients. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap. They offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.
So I'm excited to hear about a Cinderella story of one of your clients.
Yeah, so kind of piggybacking back on Quest, when our founder was building this out of his garage, they kind of went up through the ranks together. The founder at Quest was, my understanding is, they were making these bars and taking them to the gym, sharing them with their friends, and one of them just decided that they could make a business out of this. And so seeing the story unfold on both sides, both our side and their side, and coming up through the ranks and kind of being able to take risk and saying, yeah, of course I can do this, and hanging up and saying, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I know and believe that there was that level of fear and risk on their side as well. And when you look at the story of Quest, it's a beautiful story of, Ron Penna and his team building this brand and ultimately selling it for $1 billion to Atkins. And he later went on to start another brand, which is still in the protein world, low sugar, but it's called Legendary Foods, and they do toaster pastries, kind of like a Pop-Tart, but no sugar added. And so it's been fun to see how they started this business in their kitchen with their fellow gym members and built it into this empire that is still on the shelves and kind of a legacy still today. And even though they sold it, like this is just a testament to the passion of this industry and what we do. They could have sailed off into the sunset, and instead they went and started another business in this no sugar added space, high protein space, to really provide consumers with alternatives. You don't have to give up a Pop-Tart, but you also don't have to consume 38 grams of sugar when you do. And so I would definitely say that that's a Cinderella story for both them and us. You never know what if, but I don't know if Icon Foods would be here without kind of rising up with Quest. I'd like to think so, but they had a big hand in some of our success.
Well, I think you had a big hand in a lot of their success too, because I remember being at the gym back then when they first came out, and it was, somebody passing you a bar in the middle of the gym going, hey, have you tried these yet?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, boom, they were everywhere. And then all of a sudden, boom, they were like, it was insane to be able to watch. And they were fantastic. Everybody was looking at it like, how do they make these taste so good and have the protein and not have the sugar and the weight to them? Because obviously, as a bodybuilder, you get really sick of eating whey protein with nothing in it. It's like,
yeah,
especially when you have it.
I think they had, I definitely think they had a first mover's advantage. I mean, like when you think about the inception of Quest, there weren't a lot of options. Like you said, you could put your protein into a shake and drink it, but you can only drink so much protein in a day.
Right.
And so, yeah, and this is also a testament of going back to like the flavor. Like, I think Quest took off in part because it tasted good.
Yes. Oh, in whole, because it tasted good. Because the options were rather disgusting at that caloric intake. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Nice. I love it. Well, I know our listeners are going to want more from you, especially those of you who are in the food industry. So how did they start that journey with you?
Yeah, the best way to reach me is LinkedIn. I am very active, probably more active than my marketing department likes me to be, but I love to play on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is the best way. You can also reach me through iconfoods.com, and I can be reached on Instagram. That's my like private playground.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Just to the internet.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I don't know if it will be as exciting. A lot of kids and a lot of golf and a lot of family, but nonetheless, I love to play on that platform.
I love it. We will, of course, have all of Kash's links in the show notes. So go ahead and scroll down, click on the links, open them up in a new browser because we're not done yet. So Kash, I get to ask you, and this may be a kind of a weird question for you because I don't even know if you consider yourself an entrepreneur yet, but At what point in life did you consider yourself especially kind of crazy enough to think that you could become an entrepreneur?
Oh, geez. I would say that I am entrepreneurial. So I didn't mention much of this. My husband and I do own a business completely outside of the food industry because he is very much an entrepreneurial. So I think that, I think that when I was appointed CFO with Icon Foods, I really started to realize like I could do this. Like I could not only do this within Icon Foods, but I could do this in my personal life and in other areas of my life. Um, so I would say probably about 2020, which is crazy because that's when COVID hit.
Right. Everybody else gets shut down. And you're like, yes, let's go do that. This is
Yes,
awesome. You
let's
know,
do
you're
this and
especially
be
kind of crazy.
crazy. Yeah.
That is awesome. You have been absolutely awesome. Any last words for our peeps?
I don't think so. If you have any people that are listening that may not be an entrepreneur yet or may not think of themselves as one yet, I would say take every opportunity that's handed to you, whether it seems relevant or not. And to those people that already are entrepreneurials, I would say bring the people along, right? Like we're only going to have a next generation of entrepreneurs if we help bring them up.
I love it. So if you have any brainwave ideas of, hey, I was thinking about this food thing, you might want to connect with her and see whether or not it's viable and do all your research there, because you might be on to the next something. Awesome. Kash, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I know how valuable it is.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Peeps, this is Michelle Nedlick. Thank you for being here with us today. Be sure to subscribe to the show and share it with your friends. We love helping entrepreneurs grow.
Are you running a business over 7 figures but still struggling with technology headaches? Pay attention, you do not want to miss this offer. This podcast episode is brought to you by Awareness Strategies, who is offering a custom-built digital adoption roadmap for anyone running a business over 7 figures who's wanting to grow their business in the next 5 years. And it's not just a roadmap, they offer full implementation as well if that scares the out of you. Check out awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap for more details today. The link's in the show's notes. Don't regret not doing this. Do it now. That's awarenessstrategies.com/roadmap.